Hi, I'm Bethany Wallace, and today I want to just introduce a concept to you, or a term that I started using myself recently, and then kind of explain it a little bit and how kind of getting your mind around this could help you in the way that you think about your workplace, in the way that you think about your company culture, and the way that you think about getting the right people in the right seats and all of that. So for a long time, I used to use the term the workplace landscape, the workplace landscape, the landscape of the workplace, meaning just the layout, the overall feel, the view, like the big picture, basically, of the workplace. And so then I just combined those two words recently, and I've started saying the workscape. And so that's just been helpful to me when I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about it, and I'm trying to share it with other people because I think it's a great concept that could help us just to use the analogy of a workplace landscape by calling it a workscape to start thinking about we have really a lot of control over that environment, over the setting, over all of these X factors in the landscape of the workplace and the workscape. And so I'm going to talk to you just about a couple of those to just kind of get your gears turning and thinking about those things and where you're at with those things. So the first thing, like when you start thinking about a landscape or the landscape of the workplace, one of the first things that you may start thinking about is how to beautify it, how to make it look better. And a little side note is that my husband is a wildlife biologist and forester, and he does consulting work. And so this kind of conversation about what landowners want to do and need to do to improve their landscape is always a topic of conversation in our house. So that's probably what made me start thinking about this. So I guess he deserves some credit. So we always think about beautifying our workscape. But I would just encourage you to actually put beautifying your workscape towards the end of your priorities. We don't want to spend a lot of time making something look good that isn't really good. Like it needs to have the guts and the bones and all of the right components in place so that it really is good. It really is profitable. It really is a positive environment. It's all of those things you want it to be because you've done the hard work and the strategy and the operations and all of that to get it there. So rather than just start thinking, oh, let's plant some flowers, or in terms of workplace, the idea of flowers might be like, let's do some new marketing. We just need to, rebrand ourselves, or let's host some fun little event. Those things are great, but that's like the last piece. There's a lot of back work that needs to be done first. So instead of starting at beautifying your workscape, I would encourage you to think about some other things. One of those is cleaning up your workscape. And that could involve a lot of different things. It could just be a matter of looking at sort of the holes. Like, what are the things that aren't working here? Or what are the things that are working, but it's like super clunky operationally? And how can we streamline that? Or how can we reduce duplication of efforts? That's like a pet peeve of mine. How can we make sure that this piece of our company is working well with this piece and this piece and this piece, so that everything is like a smoother process, and so that the end result, which is profit and also like service to your clients, is actually happening, so you're really accomplishing your mission or goal. So you want to think about cleaning up your workscape, and that requires usually doing some serious assessment and getting real dead honest with yourself and with other people, and might involve bringing in a consultant as well. Then you also want to think about, like, one thing that my husband always talks about when he's talking about the forestry and wildlife biology and consulting is invasive species and pests, or predators and things like that. So like if we're talking about a forest environment, like in the Ozarks, which is where we live, then some of those invasive species would be like varieties of trees and plants that are not native to the area. And so they kind of crowd out all the beauty and benefit of all those natural or native plants and trees and just take over. And it's a negative, in a negative way, because those invasive species are more, they become more dominant. And so you see something like kudzu is invasive, or Bradford pear trees are invasive. There's a big long list. But the point is that what is it like? Let's compare that to the workscape. And if you think about, I would think primarily about toxic people in your workscape, and they are a negative addition to the workscape. Sometimes at the beginning they might look pretty just like a Bradford pear tree, but you'll find that they smell bad and they take over. And so you want to, that's part of your cleanup process, is figure out what invasive species do you have? What are those negative, toxic, quick to multiply factors you have going on, and how can you remove them? And sometimes you have to take drastic measures to get rid of invasive species, like firing people. Then another thing that you want to think about on the more positive side is to create the right habitat. So biologists do this all the time. Like if you want to attract, like my husband, for example, might have a client who wants to make his 200-acre property conducive for turkey hunting. And so he would plant certain plants, certain grasses that turkeys can hide in. He might say you need to plant some more trees, or you maybe need to remove some. We can plant this kind of grain that they like to eat. So there's all sorts, they need to, maybe there's a water source that's needed. There's different factors to creating the right habitat when we talk about the natural environment. And it's the same thing with your workscape. So if you want to attract, if you know who you want to attract, and by the way, that's another one of those first things you need to do, is figure out, what do you want to attract to your workscape? Do you want to attract a lot of very talented, young, new, eager employees? Then you're going to look at what kind of habitat do we need to create here within our workscape, so that those people who are our target audience are attracted to come work here. That's your ideal candidate. Then create the right habitat so that your ideal candidate wants to be there. And maybe you only have half the factors, then work on introducing those other factors into your habitat, so that when that ideal candidate comes for an interview or a site visit or something, or an internship, then they look around and they're like, oh my gosh, this workscape is exactly what I'm looking for. There are collaborative opportunities. It's easy to grow here and get promoted. There are a couple of gathering places within the actual physical location. So I know that I'm going to have at least some opportunity to just get to know my colleagues and build rapport. There are opportunities, if I'm going to work remotely, for me to interact with other people that way, maybe on Slack or whatever. So just think about, like, what are those components, environmental components, that your ideal candidates need to see in order to draw them there and keep them there. And then that's the kind of habitat that you want to create in your workscape. Okay, that I could seriously go on and on with analogies on this, but I'm just going to stop there. And I hope that this is kind of gives you just some, like, get your creative juices flowing and thinking about things a new way, because sometimes I think we get stagnant in doing the hard work of cleaning our workscape up, or ridding ourselves of those toxic invasive species, or even beautification. Like sometimes it gets, you'd get tired. You don't want to have to do that beautification work and do any of the pretty extras, because you're just exhausted from doing the hard work. But sometimes those small beautification efforts that you do at the end to your landscape, to your workscape, are what can be like the deal breaker, deal maker for your ideal candidates. If you need help with pieces of this, or with sort of developing your candidates and your employees into those ideal candidates, like specifically soft skills and career readiness training, that's what I really love doing. And would love to just talk to you or bounce ideas off of you if you want to chat. You can connect with me at bethanywallaceko.com or on LinkedIn.